Hello, everyone.
Welcome to the Queers of Time podcast.
I'm Matt.
I'm James.
I'm Kenny.
And I'm Kat.
And this is a podcast to talk about all the gay stuff in the Wheel of Time.
Because we're gay and we like the Wheel of Time.
As always, we want to start with a thank you to our beloved supporters on Patreon. We'd like to give a shout out to our newest patron, Val, as well as our amazing feral venerator of Soirain, Lurks. Today we're going to be discussing something that listeners of this podcast are likely familiar with when consuming media, and that's tropes. Often, queer people are used to seeing stereotypes of themselves in TV and movies, and it's tiring, so we want to talk about it.
So this is going to be a two-part episode, with the first part talking specifically about writer rooms and development of a TV show, as well as who's involved in making decisions and impact how writer rooms function. The second part is going to focus on the Wheel of Time TV show, what they've done well to avoid tropes, a couple of areas where they've fallen short, as well as future plot points that they need to handle with caution in future seasons. No, we couldn't very well have an episode discussing writer rooms and development without having an expert, so please give a very, very queer welcome to Ali Shields of the Real Takes podcast. Ali, we are so happy to have you there.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yay.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us a bit about yourself first? Because while we all know a lot about you, maybe some of our listeners don't.
Absolutely.
Which is a bad thing. You should know about it.
Well, I don't know about that, but thank you. So yeah, I am a screenwriter, but I am also a creative executive for a production and management company in Los Angeles. Essentially what that means is that I read scripts all day. I tell them which ones I think we should do. And then I do everything in terms of the organization of things with, of course, my lovely coworkers. And sometimes we will have, casting agents and things like that on board. But I work on packaging everything up with talent, helping to find funding, helping to find buyers for our projects. So everything before the camera starts rolling is something that I jump on board. And yeah, I've been doing that for a long time. I will say, as sort of a caveat to myself, I have not yet been in a writer's room. However, I do work with writers all the time. I am a writer myself, and I have a lot of friends who are staffed. So a lot of this information comes from my experience and also the experience of several dear friends of mine. Just wanted to put that caveat out there. And the other thing I wanted to say before we get started is that everything that I say is my opinion. There are obviously always exceptions to everything. Hollywood is not a monolith. I'm going to try to be as accurate as possible, but know that there are always different ways of doing things and exceptions to rules and all of those fun things, all the hot nuance, all of that. Oh, and the other thing is that I come from Wheel Takes, a podcast that is a first-time reader podcast about the Wheel of Time that I co-host with my husband, Gus.
Yeah, just a side note.
I should probably mention our
just
podcast.
A small side note.
Yeah, if I go through this without plugging the podcast, Gus will murder me. So.
I was going to say, I'm like, Gus is going to be like, how'd it go? And then he'll be like, I forgot to mention the podcast. He'll be like, go re-record it.
You'd be amazed how often I forget that we do a podcast. Like, because to me, it feels like just having a nice chat with my husband for several hours and in front of a microphone, and I don't actually get to see anyone. I'm not always altogether convinced that our fans are not just sock puppet accounts that Gus has made to make me feel like we have a podcast, but so I do forget sometimes that we have a podcast because I'm like, oh, it's just us having our nightly chat about the Wheel of Time.
Our nightly chat.
Chat,
As you do.
A weekly chat about this book series we both like. Why not?
Of course.
That has consumed our entire lives.
I have no idea what you're talking about. We are absolutely not doing a podcast about the Wheel of Time.
Can't relate.
We are not spending hours and hours working on that. No, not at all.
Yeah. Well, thank you all so much again for having me. I'm so psyched to talk about writers' rooms.
Yeah,
I'm excited.
absolutely. So speaking of writers' rooms, like typically how is a writer's room initially formed and where in the process is that? Like obviously it's after kind of the pitch is sold, I'm guessing.
Hmm.
Or are episodes already written when they're trying to do stuff? How does that all work?
Yeah. So when the show gets picked up, what will sometimes happen is that the pilot gets made first. And then they'll show it to a room full of executives and they decide whether or not they're going forward with it. And then a writer's room gets hired. Sometimes, if they're really confident in what it is, sometimes the writer's room will happen earlier. So again, when we talk about when things happen, it's always going to be, it depends. But a writer's room happens very early on in the process. Once, the show is definitely moving forward, they're definitely getting a season. And that can be decided at various points along the way. The showrunner will get a budget initially of how much they're able to spend on those writers. So there are different levels of writers in a writer's room. It's not all just one big committee, right? And that is usually decided based on, well, that's usually just based on their experience. So they'll usually get promoted through the ranks over time.
Right.
So your higher level writers are going to be more expensive just off the bat. So there will be fewer of them. And then it sort of pyramids outward as we get down. So there will be usually more lower level writers on staff than the upper level writers, but the upper level writers will get more pay and more responsibility.
Okay.
So yeah, as they go, they'll hire their upper level writers first, then work their way down and see how many people they have room for.
Right.
So the showrunners at the top, they're also known as the executive producer. Executive producer is a really annoying type.
Yeah. Executive producer is a term that I keep hearing. And I feel like all the time it's used for something completely different. And I'm
Yes.
like, okay, is that important, an executive producer? Does it mean something when someone is like, because there's EPs, there's co-EPs, there's...
Yes. And we'll kind of talk through some of the other levels of writer, but so a showrunner and an executive producer are the same thing, but executive producer is kind of this nebulous title in Hollywood that can mean anything. So whenever anyone comes to you and goes, I'm an executive producer on blank, ask questions. Because what it can mean is I'm a showrunner on it. So I run the overall production. It can mean I've worked on this production in a high level way for a long time and then was eventually promoted to the title of executive producer. So think like Jeff Probst on Survivor is an executive producer,
Right.
but he was a host first. So he eventually worked his way into a decision-making title. It can also mean I am a very rich man and I threw a lot of money at this. And now I have bought myself the title of executive producer and they just hope I never show up on set. So it can mean a lot of different things depending. It can also mean people who do take on producer roles. So for me, at my job, anything that I develop there, that I find and develop, I jump on as an executive producer when cameras start rolling. So I do get that executive producer credit and I get pay as an executive producer. So, it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
Okay.
But in this instance, showrunner and executive producer in a writer's room get used kind of interchangeably. And on IMDb Pro, they're called executive producers. Then you have to look and see showrunner in italics. It's really obnoxious to me. But when I'm trying to find showrunners to reach out to for our projects, I have to really look and make sure that executive producer is what I hope it means. But yeah, so they essentially are the ones running the entire thing. When it comes to a feature, usually the sort of unifying artistic vision is the director. They're the ones kind of overseeing everything. In TV, it's the showrunner. There are so many disparate departments and people and things involved that we need one artistic voice that's sort of at the center, making those crucial final decisions. So they'll run the writer's room. They will help, approve final locations, final schedules. They'll basically be a producer and a head writer wrapped up in one thing. And they're responsible for, final approval of casting, final approval of the writers that they pick, final approval of scripts. All of those things go through the showrunner. But take the words final say with a little bit of a grain of salt, because executives love to come in and shake things up and
Mhm.
be a headache for, everyone.
Give a lot of notes.
As an executive, some of our reputation is not unearned. So that's a thing. But yeah, they're essentially there to be the final artistic say and the final artistic vision. Whether or not that's always the case is very up in the air. They're also responsible for creating the show's Bible, which is essentially a
Right.
huge document. It could be as long as novels in some cases. I think my manager used to work with Gene Roddenberry, and I think he said that the Star Trek Bible is like 1,000 pages long.
It's got to be massive.
Which back in the time where they would just fax it to each other sounds absolutely wild to me.
Oh my God.
He has a hard copy of it somewhere that he wants to show me at some point, which I'm really excited about. But
It's so cool.
yeah, so they can be incredibly detailed. And the purpose of those Bibles is to showcase to writers that get hired what the direction of the show is, who the important characters are, what the important plot points are going to be, what thematically we're going for, all of those details. It's almost like a D&D manual, right? It's the overall important beats of the show.
So quick question, because for the Wheel of Time, we do have the Wheel of Time companion. What difference do you think the Bible is from the companion?
That's a really good question. So the companion is going to be sort of the details of a lot of. I haven't actually gotten to look at the companion yet.
True.
I am still on book 7 and I'm not allowed to do anything fun. But I would imagine that the companion is going to be fleshing out the world even further of the Wheel of Time, but with the idea that everybody who is approaching the companion probably has a really good idea of what the Wheel of Time is and who the important characters are and what the story beats are. Not so for a Bible, right? We're creating something where people who are coming to it for the first time could look at it and understand sort of the overarching importance of what's going on in the story and who the important characters are to pay attention to. So that would be the difference between those. So I've heard a lot of people expressing concerns because they hear that not every writer on the show has read The Wheel of Time. So just to provide a little bit of perspective in terms of the functionality of a writer's room, I've had friends who have been hired to be in a writer's room for Monday on Friday.
Oops.
Oh my God.
So not everybody has the ability to read a 16 book series in that time.
Yeah. Oh my God.
But also, it's a concern that I don't really relate with, because the show is going to be seen by so many people who haven't read the books.
Exactly.
If everyone inside the room know everything about the books, they're going to miss, they're not going to get that this is not understandable by people who haven't read the books.
You need a balance.
You definitely do. And so, I can understand why people would hear that and go, what the hell, basically? Why wouldn't they have read all those books? Maybe that will help a little bit with the understanding of, I don't have time to read 16 books in 2 days, or however long it was that they hired people before they started working. So, the showrunner's job is to make sure that everybody's on the same page about what's supposed to happen, who these people are. And then also what will often happen is they will hire somebody who is supposed to be sort of the book expert, or on a police procedural, it's someone with police experience, right? Who can flag, hey, that's not going to work in terms of realism, right? Medical procedurals will have someone who might be a former doctor on the show who can walk them through what the medical jargon should be. That's the Sarah Nakamuras of the world.
Right. Yeah. The consultant.
Do they always go with what Sarah Nakamura suggests? No, it's a collaborative medium, right? And at the end of the day, we're always trying to err on the side of awesome. Not every suggestion of Sarah's is going to get taken. And not everything that Rafe wants is going to happen. Not just because of executives, but weather can happen. COVID can happen. Actors can leave the show. Things change. And
sometimes all those things at once.
And there's sometimes no way to prepare for that. And you just have to go with it and hope that you land on your feet and stick the landing, even if there are little hops on the way. So then, you have your co-EPs or your next group. There's usually one, maybe two of them, and they're the right-hand person to the showrunner. So when the showrunner is on location, the showrunner's not there, for whatever reason, the co-EP is there running the writer's room, and they get the final say on the final drafts of scripts before they go to the showrunner. So they get to approve those scripts before they go. Then you've got your producers, your supervising producers, which is kind of like the highest position before you hit that big league of the executive producer title. So they work directly with the writing staff, developing the story, breaking the story, and it's more of a leadership position. Then you get your producers. Usually, I think at about this range, your pay changes from weekly to per episode, which is what you really want, because typically lower level writers will have like a weekly salary and then script fees for anything that they actually write, versus these folks get paid whether they write the episode or not, which is a huge bonus to your paycheck.
That is a big difference.
It's a huge difference. They get paid regardless of whether or not they had anything to do with the writing of the episode.
Okay.
And you've got your co-producers who kind of answer to the people above. They handle all the delegated duties passed down by the producers. You have your story editors. They're usually writers who have been on a show or two. It's kind of like their second or third year of being a writer. So they have a little bit more responsibility. And then your staff writers, who are your lowest level writers. Some people call them baby writers. No one likes that.
It's not patronizing at all.
No, not at all. And they're usually people who are in their first writing job or an early writing job. Then you also have your writer's assistants who are staff writers are not guaranteed an episode to write, especially with streaming. This is super important. Because there are only 8 to 10 episodes. Gone are the days where there are as many 30 episode seasons, right? Once upon a time, you could have these big rooms. You would probably write an episode. Maybe it's the bottle episode, so it's not the most important. Obviously, the higher up you are, the more important your episode is that you get to write. Showrunners getting to write like the pilot, the finale, all of that stuff. And then everyone sort of splits it up from there. You may not get an episode. Your purpose in the room is to be that idea generator and go, what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? And come up with ideas, beat out the story with the writers for those first, 8 or so weeks. Then writers get assigned an episode. Story editor and above, you're usually guaranteed an episode on the show so that you get those script fees, which are pretty huge. Then they'll take their individual scripts, go write them for like 2 weeks, a week or two, and come back, and everyone typically will edit it together. Some writers' rooms operate differently, but that's what I've seen is pretty common.
2 weeks sounds so short to write anything.
Oh, it's so fast. It's so fast. Most people going into a room are like, I'll see you in 20 weeks because that's their life for 20 weeks.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it can be as short as 10 weeks. And it's just boom, 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 boom. If it's a mini room for a smaller series, it can be as little as 10 weeks.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
For these bigger shows, these bigger broadcast shows, it can be like 40 plus. It just depends. But that is your life for that period of time.
Yeah.
Then you get your
Oh my
writer's
God.
assistants who are there taking notes, proofreading, organizing ideas and concepts, doing research as needed. And then your writer's PAs who are running the office, getting coffee, getting lunch, answering phones. And that's everybody.
Wow.
So as long as all the writing is not finished, they don't start shooting anything. Like there's some time in between, right?
It depends.
Depends.
Used to be that writing could happen in conjunction with production. That used to be a lot more common. With the advent of streaming, where you have smaller rooms, fewer episodes, you're starting to see a very finite line between writing and production. There's a lot of debate as to whether or not that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing's really finalized until it gets edited.
Right.
There's lots of things that can happen.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the news regarding like the Wheel of Time season 3 when there was like I think they're supposed to start the writer rooms sometime this month, something like that.
Yeah.
So I'm like trying to have an idea of how long it means until something else happens.
Trying to calculate
Yeah.
approximately when they start filming, or
I mean, there are still edits that are made like to the script, like minor edits while they're in production, right? Like if they think of something that they want to change, or is that not once the script's done, it's done?
A lot of the time what will happen is if you wrote the episode, you'll be on set in case they want to have something changed at the last minute. It depends. Again, it depends. But, a lot of the time they'll invite the writer onto set in case there needs to be those changes. The showrunner's also there in the event that changes need to be made. But honestly, edits get made to what everything looks like, to the shape of the story, as late as the editing room. Things end up on the cutting room floor all the time, which is why that pool scene got cut. I'm assuming for time, because it was shot and made into promotional material. And I'm assuming it was a very last minute cut for time.
Yeah.
Because there's very finite, and of course, everything's sort of changing in Hollywood right now in terms of standards, but there's usually a pretty finite amount of time that they want episodes to be on TV. Used to be for commercial slotting, but now it's a little bit more nebulous. It's just because we've gotten so used to the format of TV that when you try to play outside of that, sometimes it's like trying to fix a wheel that's not broken.
Yeah. And I'm assuming that like a TV show that is on its first season and haven't made its proof yet is even more constrained by those limits.
Yes, especially considering the fact that a fantasy show like this would be a huge financial investment. So they're going to be fairly rigid before it is out there in the world and they can see how successful it's been. So, I could see a world in which things relax over time. I could also see a world in which things get more rigid over time. It kind of depends, because as executives get excited about the show, as it starts to gain traction, as it's getting, fairly positive feedback and reviews, as it gets, as it becomes the number one streaming show on Amazon for a good long while. There could be some allowing the creatives to take more creative control. There could also be executives getting even more invested. So it just depends, especially considering the will they, won't they that we're having with a recession right now. Things are getting, decisions are getting made by finance departments like they never have before. So things like that can factor into the equation. So it all depends. And as you're seeing too, Marvel shows getting made with 6 episodes, there are definitely potentials for people to be like, could we do it in fewer amounts of time or not?
Could we do a 2-episode series?
That's
a 2-episode season.
They come to us and they're like, it's really just an 8-hour movie or whatever they decide to say. So
we never should have allowed the finance number type people to be in charge of creative decisions.
Well, I think it's a complicated question, right? Because I do think that
someone's got to pay for it.
Yeah. What's interesting about entertainment, specifically film and television, is it is commodifying the arts, and it's kind of like, how do you commodify this nebulous thing? How do you commodify taste and culture and all of these things? But we've been doing that since time immemorial, right? We've always had patrons of the arts. We've always had art as business. You've always had people that you are writing for and people you cannot critique because you are writing for them.
Right.
So it's always been a odd couple that has existed. And I have a lot of conversations with my father-in-law, who's an opera singer, about where he decries the fact that, it's become this so commodified. But to a certain extent, I think they do need each other to thrive.
Yeah.
And they have to find ways to live with one another. And sometimes that means that the executives have to say, okay, against my better judgment, you can buy this $300 anthropology rug that we don't actually need. And sometimes, which I've been in that position, where I go, okay, buy this $300 anthropology rug. I guess you're the creative, and who am I really? And then sometimes, it's the opposite, where it's creatives, having to deal with executives and the
accountants,
kibosh that they can put on some things, and the accountants and and the money side of things, because you do have people who are investing a lot of money in your success. Yeah. So they're going to have feelings, and that's how that happens. Otherwise, we could be making plays for 7 people in our house, which is totally fine. Right. And there's a place for that. But it's not going to go on and become Amazon's top streaming show. And we just have to know that going in.
Yeah, I just shudder at the idea of creative decisions being made by Bert from accounting, whose idea of a good story is like Catcher in the Rye that he once read and hasn't read anything since for like 50 years. And he's like, those types of people making decisions. It's just kind of scary.
I don't think they're the ones making the creative decisions. I think they're the ones telling the creatives what decisions they can make
Right.
that are within their budget.
Which is effectively as bad.
They can sometimes make creative decisions in terms of, we have shows we have to cancel, what shows are doing well financially. That can that can factor in the equation. But I will say, I have a friend whose show was saved by the finance department. Right? Somebody in finance read her script that they were considering doing, and it was a Cuban American show. She was a Cuban American in finance, and pushed and pushed and pushed and said, this show is important. This show is important. And it did get made because of it.
Nice.
Is it One Day at a Time?
It wasn't. It was Diary of an American President.
Oh, that was a good show.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, things can influence each other in a positive way. No executive is going, I want to make a bad show. I want to make a show that no one watches, and that's terrible. Right? So no one goes into film and TV going, I want to be the bad guy in this situation. I want to be the reason why things don't happen. Sometimes that is what occurs. But I think most people are drawn to Hollywood because they do want to make things, and they want to make things that are good and that make a difference. And, or at least that are fun. So, yeah.
So you mentioned canceling a TV show, and it's kind of like a finance thing. But like with streaming, it's harder and harder to get actually an idea of whether a show actually does well. And like, especially since I'm mentioning that because I was reading an article earlier today about kind of these trends of a lot of queer woman-centered TV show being canceled this year. And since we don't really have numbers of viewership or whether they're doing well, it's hard to know whether it's actually a finance decision or it's something else.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know whether you have some style of that.
There's been a lot of discussion lately in things that I've attended about, and of course, a lot of chatter on Twitter, especially screenwriting Twitter is so interesting. It's simultaneously the friendliest and worst place to be. And that feels like all of Twitter.
It's Twitter in a nutshell, really.
Yeah, it's horrible, but also great. But there's been a lot of chatter about, the recent cancellations of TV shows, about streaming in general, and the potential come to Jesus that we might be seeing about how much content there is, how many streaming services there is, how many shows there are, how many streaming services there are, putting all of this money toward these shows that may or may not do well. How do we know what shows are doing well, really? There's a lot of discussion about that. The thing that streaming services have been doing, it's been largely experimental at this point in terms of the content that they've been doing. And they're looking for ways to figure out how to, quantify and prove what is going to be successful. So there have been discussions about things like data mining for figuring out what content to do. There have been discussions about, being able to tell when exactly it is that you stop watching a show, and then being able to see, even potentially being able to see, Stranger Things had this moment where they caught an error in the show, and now they're changing it. Right. And there's been discussions about whether or not that will be a slippery slope where we can see now when you stop watching a show, try to evaluate why that's happening, if it's happening as like a trend, and then see if we can change the show so that people are not turning it off as much. So that's been kind of interesting in terms of different ways that streaming and the conversation around streaming have started to bubble up. And then in addition to that, there's been a lot of discussions of, are we just trying to reinvent a wheel that's not broken? Like, broadcast was fine. Why did we go out there and try to create like 90-minute episodes? Why did we go out and try to create all these new things that, maybe they're not as good as we think they are? Maybe we should bring back the 30 episodes with fewer shows. So there have been a lot of discussions about those things. But in terms of the cancellations, there are some decisions that have been made that have baffled a lot of people recently. I won't necessarily go too into which ones those are because I like my job, but there have been decisions that have baffled a lot of people recently. And we can only really speculate as to why those decisions get made, who along the path decided, what, this show isn't worth it anymore, or that the show is not doing what it needs to be doing. And some of that is just internal things. could part of it be that there is a bias against certain content? That's definitely a potential reason.
Yeah.
Could it also be that 1,000 other factors, and somehow they just seemed to pick all of the queer shows? That also is possible, that there was a huge oversight about that. Because we're not there, we don't know. But it is an unfortunate trend that has been happening. And I think everyone's curious as to why and upset about it. I mean, I'm sad about Gordita Chronicles, which is real for me. Sad about Gordita Chronicles. But yeah, it can be things like HBO decided to get rid of their young audiences department. And so Gordita Chronicles gets canceled, even though it's a successful show and well received.
I think like a lot of the cancelled show, typically in queer show, was like CW show, and there was a merger regarding CW, and I don't remember who, Warner or something like that. I don't remember who exactly, and like a lot of CW show got cancelled. It just turned out that CW also had a lot of diversity in their show, so it's a lot of diversity that got lost too. So yeah, it's a complex problem.
It makes it so hard to get invested in shows too. Like it's I find it hard, when I hear about a new show that has a cool premise to it, a cool plot, the cast looks good, and part of me is like, do I want to get attached to this? Because who knows what's going to happen? Yeah, especially if it's queer. Specifically, if it's queer.
Yeah, I mean that's been a big topic of discussion too. The fact that there are a lot of people now who feel burned by the fact that shows get canceled with such frequency. And so they're saying things like, well, I don't want to watch it until season 2 because I want to make sure that my investment pays off. But if enough people say that, then there's not a proven audience for something and the show falls off and the show fails.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Absolutely. So it's become a really interesting time to be in the entertainment industry because we're still dealing with the aftermath of COVID and how that affected everyone and everything. I mean, not that we're even in the aftermath. We're still very much in it.
No, it's over. It's fine.
Things shut down all the time because actors get COVID or what have you. And so it's been a really interesting time to be in the industry because there's just so many factors and variables and, reevaluating that's being done. And I think it's going to continue to be a really tumultuous time in the industry. But I would also argue it seems like there are not very many times where it is not a tumultuous time to be in the entertainment industry.
Right.
I mean, people were decrying the end of the entertainment industry when studios were forced to divest themselves of their theaters, and we lived through that. And, so it's just, the question becomes, what will it look like next in its next life cycle?
Right.
And will we make it through it?
This is the thing.
Yeah.
Will you survive? I believe in it.
There's always something.
I mean, it'll always survive in some form or another.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think so.
I do kind of want to talk about tropes a little bit because for me, tropes are very much just overused. There are storytelling elements that serve a purpose, and then there are some that just become so easy to use and so reliable and so annoying to certain people. And that's when they become a trope. How would you define a trope, Allie?
Well, I guess I would probably define it as a trend that will happen in terms of the archetype of a character or the beat of a story. So I think when it starts to get into sort of the negative connotation of what a trope is when it starts to become a stereotype that actively is harmful, or if it starts to become something that we are tired of. And it's interesting because I've studied a lot of genre, and this class that I took talked about how genre tends to go through these phases where, we have the sort of phase where we're all figuring out what this genre is and what the sort of standard archetypes for this genre are and what it looks like, what its iconography is, what, with Westerns, it's like the black hat versus the white hat. And we know that the white hat person is always the good guy and the black hat is always the bad guy. But at one point we had to figure that out. Then we get the classical phase where we're really understanding what this genre is. We get really excited about it. We see it. And we understand who the characters are and what the stories are supposed to look like. And then we get very sick of that. right? Then we're like, enough of this. Now it's starting to feel tired. And we start to try to find ways to make the genre feel, or the character to archetype or whatever, feel new again.
Yeah.
Because everyone was doing it before, because it was a new thing and we all got excited about it. Happens with zombies every like 5 years. All of a sudden, everyone's doing zombies again when we said zombies were dead, because we found a new way to do it that was interesting.
Right.
And, and then zombies are dead again until they're not.
When in doubt, just make the thing horny.
No, they tried that with warm bodies and it didn't really work.
And it didn't work.
Sometimes it does.
I liked it, actually.
You would. You would.
Yeah.
I love it.
Fuck you. What is that supposed to mean?
It's nothing. Nothing at all.
But now we're seeing this kind of like postmodern period where we're kind of tired of almost all of the archetypes, all
Everything.
Of the tropes, everything.
We're tired of everything.
For really good reasons in a lot of ways. And so we're starting to see the development of things like hybrid genre.
Right.
We're starting to see new kinds of protagonists that get injected, right? What if it wasn't, what if the Western wasn't a straight white guy? What if we were with the plucky school teacher instead, or had a Western with an indigenous protagonist? Who would have thought that would be so revolutionary? But it is. So we're in this time where we're starting to look at the iconography and the tropes that we've become really accustomed to in the storytelling that we've had, and go, we're sick of it a little bit, or a lot bit in a lot of different cases. How do we expand beyond that? Because prior to this period, right, queer romance in general was completely revolutionary, right? Having a queer romance in general on screen that we would try to put in front of an audience was completely revolutionary. But in order to make it palatable, we had to be like, okay, well, it'll be an AIDS story, or it'll be this story or that story. Stories where we're like, this is what a queer narrative looks like, building the iconography.
And even with like, not to interrupt, but even with queer made films like in the early 2000s and with early 2000s YA books and TV shows, there's always the trope of it's two white high schoolers, and one is either artsy or nerdy, and it's always a he, falls in love with the jock who is closeted and who almost makes it to coming out but just can't come out, and they end up not getting together, and the jock stays sad and closeted, and the artsy or nerdy kid ends up having his own little self-revelation. And that worked for a few movies, but dear God, there's a lot of them.
And probably a beautiful monologue about butterflies or something like that.
Yep, exactly.
I mean, and that was what we decided was a safe queer story to tell, right?
Well, and that's the thing, like part of it, what you mentioned about making it palatable is really, really interesting to me, because you can have certain bits that push those boundaries, like being gay, but you can't push too many boundaries. Like they still have to be white, because white's okay.
White's fine. White's safe.
White is safe.
Yes.
A person of color and gay, that's too much too quickly.
No, because that's too many variables, right?
Yes,
that's
exactly.
2 variables. That's too many.
Right, because we decided that safe Black stories are slavery stories, or or civil rights stories, and we've decided that safe Latinx stories are immigration stories or gang stories, right? And so we've been placing things in these safe boxes where we go, okay, this is what the people want about this narrative, and we're not going to go outside of that, because this is what is getting made, and we're just grateful that it's getting made in the first place. Right?
Yes.
We're just grateful that there's Black people on screen, period. And now we're getting into this phase where that is, of course, not enough. Right. And that some of those stories that have been harped upon and harped upon and harped upon have been proven to be actually pretty harmful. Right. It's been putting these people in boxes that don't represent the, no culture, no sexual orientation is a monolith. And we have ascribed that experience to one monolithic story that we can explore in a safe way. So now we're at this point where it feels like it's almost a new frontier, right? Which it hasn't been, obviously, because stories from various cultures, various sexual orientations, et cetera, have been around since time immemorial. But the fact that people are willing to do them, and people are willing to diversify and think about diversity for their writers' rooms, these are novel concepts. And it shouldn't be, and it's frustrating that it is, but they are novel.
Yeah.
15 years ago, I likely would have been the only woman in a writer's room.
Yeah.
Right. And that would have been like, this is our diversity hire.
Yeah.
Stand up.
Right.
Wave to the audience. Right. And then, and she's queer and disabled. Great. She checks several boxes for us.
Wow.
Look what we've done.
And we can pay you less and get all of that diversity? Amazing.
Yeah.
This is why I could never be in a writer's room, because if I felt like I was a diversity hire, all the other writers would mysteriously vanish and never reappear until I was the only one left. And then I would be the writer's room.
Yeah.
Which is not professional. You know?
Wow, it only took 44 minutes for Matt to make a joke about murdering people.
Wow.
It's not a joke.
Got a record.
It's like, I'm not kidding.
But yeah, so these are it's ridiculous that it's taken this long, but these are novel things that we're coming up against in a big way. The fact that because historically rooms have been very male and white and straight up until now, a lot of our upper level writers and our creators of TV shows are white men.
Right.
Yeah.
Specifically.
Right.
So we're struggling to find people who have been given enough opportunity to reach those upper level positions. So that's become a big crisis in Hollywood. It's just the lack of people of color who are ready, because you also don't want to do the other thing, which is thrust them into a situation that they're not prepared for and have them set up to fail. Right. So how do we bridge this gap? How do we make sure that our writers' rooms are diverse? How do we make sure that the lived experiences of people are honored in the way that they should be in a writer's room, especially when it comes to content that is not white and straight? And how are we making sure that the stories that we're telling are varied and representative of an entire culture, or steering away from trope? It's a lot. I mean, it's work worth doing. It's certainly, but it's a big thing right now, which is that we haven't historically propped up people and given them these opportunities. So now the lack of those people who can provide this sort of life experience and this helpful life experience had been purposely shunted, and now we need it. And where do we find them? Which is great. It's great because a lot of people are doing amazing programs to help provide that experience for people, but it's not enough yet.
Yeah.
It's not enough, but I do think it's pretty amazing that you got a whole industry that you do feel it changing in a span of a decade or two. Because I'm in an industry that is still very much male dominated and not very open to people of color. And it sucks.
Yeah.
I'm the only woman in my team and we're 20.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild.
So, yeah.
I mean, I think that's what I love about being in the position that I'm in at this moment, is that I think that because I'm a part of decisions being made, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back in any way, but that I feel like I have an opportunity to try and bring people forward that I am excited about, with stories that I am excited about. I feel like I have an opportunity to say, according to all the research I've done, or according to, the conversations that I'm aware are happening, this is a problematic moment in this script. I feel like I am able to at least provide some moments of like, what about women? What about people of color? What about, why are the only queer characters in your story the villains? Have you noticed that? And that, and there's still, a lot of work to be done on that, in that regard.
Yeah.
But I do think that what's encouraging and exciting about it is that when I bring those things up, people are excited that I said something about it. They're like, oh, that's a great no, as opposed to, and every now and then I get pushback because that happens.
Sure.
But usually it's greeted with a lot of excitement and enthusiasm, as opposed to frustration. Which is nice. It's nice that there's become that there's listening happening, and I think that the things that I'm seeing is like where we kind of get stuck is that there are certainly people who are still very much learning, and they are not necessarily in the cultural zeitgeist because they're older and they have children and they've got things going on. And so they're excited to learn. But, progress is slow.
Yeah, it takes time.
I feel like there's a lot of like undercorrecting and then overcorrecting as far as like diversity, not only on the behind the scenes, but in the scenes. Because first we had, you want a queer character? Well, they're going to be a villain and they're going to be very problematic and then they're going to die. And that's all you're going to get. And then we overcorrect, and any queer character has to have a very special queer moment where we learn about queer issues, and you might as well be watching an after-school special.
After-school special,
It's nice, Glee. It's nice to have queer people or any, more diverse character dealing with those issues, but I'm still waiting for the happy medium where we just see queer characters of color, just being themselves and facing conflict that doesn't have anything to do with with their sexuality or their race.
I think the encouraging thing that I have experienced, because I'm in meetings with executives constantly, is that 99% of the time that we are having a discussion with an executive, they bring up diversity and that it's important to them. And they bring up, but also what we want is stories that feel outside of the scope of what we've accepted are appropriate stories for this group.
Yeah.
Right. We want to see Latinx stories. Certainly there's room for immigration stories and gang stories, but there is so much more to the Latinx experience than that. Certainly, we can have an effeminate gay man, and there's so much room for that. But there is also room for nuance within the queer, and he doesn't need to be a white, cis, effeminate gay man, right? We can see some nuance within what that experience is. We can see queer characters of color. We can see mixed race people. We can see these people who have these life experiences that are not the monolithic life experience we've decided a group of people have. So I do think that that's been a really encouraging and exciting conversation for me, is that I think that most of the executives that I know who I speak with regularly are on that page. So what's interesting then is we're still making things to try to make money. So how do we tell these stories that we feel like are important in a world where we haven't seen these kinds of stories before? And there are shows that are doing it, and we're seeing the success of that. And what's great about that is then we can point to it, because no one wants to be first. That's the thing. No one wants to be the one, because if I move a project forward, I have to believe in it with my whole soul, because it could be my job, right? If it's not, it's a lot of money. It could be my job that gets lost over it, right? So I have to believe in it more than anything. And I do. But that's a much scarier ask if you don't have a comp show to compare it to. Right? And most of the questions that people will ask you when you're pitching a show are things like, what shows could you compare it to?
Yeah, it's the same with novel querying.
So that becomes an issue if we haven't seen this kind of thing before.
Right.
This is work that is getting done, but that's why it takes time, and it's going to take people attempting and failing, and it's going to take people, demanding that content and showing up for that content when it comes out, and showing that there's a demand for that content, which that's important. That's an important piece of it. So it is happening much slower than I would like, but it is happening.
Yeah. It's, I'm thinking about, because the only thing in my head for the past little bit has been A League of Their Own, which is, if you haven't watched it, fantastic.
I'm so excited about it. I'm so excited about it. Oh,
I'm not going to give any spoilers. It is chef's kiss, though. It's so good. And I think Abby Jacobson, who co-created the show, she was doing a chat with the writer's room, and the diversity in that writer's room, it's like the show is really well written, and it becomes very obvious why it's so good. It's because they have a lot of different people with different lived experiences who are contributing to the story that they're trying to tell. And so, there are quite a few queer characters on that show, and they're all different. And it feels it's really exciting, and it's been really exciting to see how excited everyone is about it, because it makes me hopeful that like, okay, this could be the show that, future showrunners point to say like, well, look at A League of Their Own.
Yeah, exactly.
I think there's the audience for it.
Exactly. And I'm so excited about that show. I can't even stand it. I think also something important to bring up too is that there was also a phase in Hollywood where it was like, okay, well, let's cast these white characters as people of color and let that be, the work we've done, and say, look, we've got these white characters. We did who are not white. We did it. All right. That's the allyship. We did it.
Done.
And I think there is a start now, an understanding of, well, that's not it. We need to be making sure that diversity is reflected in the writer's room. It's reflected behind the camera. It's reflected by the executives working on the project, because that's also a big thing, is to get to the executive level. It's a big process. Hollywood is not the most accessible industry on the planet, right? Because a lot of it is doing jobs for very little. It's not a super, so if you don't have a parent that can support you through that, that's a diversity of experience that is not leaking its way into Hollywood in the same way that it could in other industries. And those lived experiences are important and valuable, and are why we're not going to have, to quote Arrested Development, a banana costs $10 because everyone in your writer's room is out of touch. All right.
Right.
So I think that has also been a journey that's been happening. That's very exciting, is that, we're seeing that it's important across the spectrum of just making sure that there's just someone in that room, and not just one. This is also the important thing. You don't just want your one lower level staff writer to be the only woman or only queer person in the room, because that puts the onus on them at already a precarious position in their careers to have to speak up about potential problematic storylines.
Yeah.
So making sure that maybe at least they have a backup.
At least one more.
At the very least have two. So that they're not having to, again, cultures aren't a monolith, so that they're not having to hold space for the entire culture or the entire sexuality spectrum. Because I, as a bisexual, cannot speak adequately to the experience of a trans man. We just don't have the same life experience, and that's okay. But it would be useful to have a myriad of experience in the room, like you said. Yeah.
Speaking of sexuality, it has been a very, very good discussion about how writers' rooms are made in production and everything. And I appreciate the schooling because it's given me a lot to think about. But we do have a game that we want to do.
Okay.
And this was the game that you suggested, which was ranking Wheel of Time characters on the Kinsey scale.
Yes. I'm so excited about it.
Okay, so for those few listeners that we have that aren't familiar with the Kinsey scale, it is a way of measuring sexual attraction to the same sex. It goes on a scale of 0 to 6, where 0 is exclusively heterosexual and 6 is exclusively homosexual. Kind of 1 is like you're only slightly gay, like incidentally gay.
Just a bit. Incidentally
You're gay. You're circumstantially gay.
You have a few beers, but you don't regret it.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
Right.
You got a few beers, make out with a guy, but you don't really regret it.
No. Yeah.
And then number 2 is like, it only takes 1 beer to get you to that point.
Yeah.
Right.
Number 3 is you enjoy each sex the same. They're all good. Number 4 is it takes a beer to get you to drink with the opposite sex, or to get you to have sex with the opposite sex. And then 5 is mostly gay, incidentally heterosexual. And number 6 is faggot. So,
wow.
Your words, not mine.
I just, I've never placed myself on the Kinsey scale. I would place myself at a 10.
Yeah.
I would place myself at a strong 5.8.
Okay.
I don't think James heard the number that I said.
I did. You said 10.
Yes.
Mhm.
I told that to a friend earlier today, and they were like, oh, well, there's no such thing as a 10 on the Kinsey scale. I'm like, well, I bet I could make one.
Camille, where are you?
I want to make like a mass joke, but you're not gonna get it. So I'm like, okay, not gonna be
You're going to make a what joke?
mass because like
Oh,
10.
yeah.
If it's modulo 6, it's a 4. So it's anyway.
I get it.
Yeah.
That's the least gay I've ever heard you sound, James. Yeah.
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 Football.
I'm probably like a 5 to 5.5, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like when I'm drunk, I don't care.
That's how I am. I'll make out with anybody when I'm drunk.
Mhm.
I've made that with everybody when I'm drunk, which is why I don't get drunk a lot.
Yeah, I think I'm a 5 to a 5.5. Probably closer to 6, actually.
5.8.
Yeah. Thank you. It's 5.8.
Guess I'm the only 6 here.
So Ali, you are
I'm a 3 at the
you are diversity in our room.
Yeah, I'm a 3. So I'll bring the diversity. I'm a 3.
I was like,
There
you're
you go.
basically straight.
Well,
God.
no. Don't put
James.
that
Don't
on
say
me.
that. Oh, dare you?
I'm sorry.
James.
Don't say that to a bisexual.
You're cancelled.
James.
Do not.
I'm not saying bi erasure is something.
This is by erasure.
Ellie, I'm so sorry.
Did you say erasure?
I'm sorry. Yes, you know how I have a thing with pronouncing things.
What the hell is with you and your Pacific Northwest pronunciation? Patreon, erasure?
I'm just better.
Matt, don't start with a southern accent either, okay?
Whatever.
I would say I'm a 3, but if anything happened to Gus, just given this world, definitely a 4 in my dating life after that.
So you're a 3 when you're regular getting dick.
I'm a 3 because I'm married to a man, but if I were like independent of Gus, it'd be absolutely a 4 at this time.
Okay.
Okay, that makes sense.
Maybe a 4.5.
Interesting.
Okay. Let's start with the characters.
Yes, so I did pull a list of all of the principal characters, but I think there's like 17 and we aren't going to go through all 17, so I highlighted a few.
Okay.
Starting out with Egwene. Where would we all rank her on the Kinsey scale?
1.
Yeah.
This is tricky. Yeah, I would say 1 as well for Egwene. Between 1 and 2, maybe between 1 and 2.
She's super straight.
She's so straight.
She's pretty straight.
Yeah.
Mhm.
She gets dickmatized too easily.
I'm sorry about that, but I'm gonna put her like at a 2 because I'm sorry, but her reaction to seeing Lanfear for the first time, definitely not straight.
Yes.
This is what I'm saying.
This is true. This is
Yeah.
true.
That's slightly homosexual. She considers it. So I would say like a 1.
That's why I say a 2.
Yeah.
Between 1 and 2. But
if it's just the one woman in the world you would sleep with, then she has to be literally the most beautiful woman in the entire world.
Okay, maybe.
I'm going to say 0.
Yeah, I was
That's true.
closer to saying 0. I'm like 0.5 because
Yeah.
Lanfear, but that's about it.
I'm pretty sure her reaction to Lanfear is just get away from my dragon dick and not.
See, but here's the thing. Here's the thing. I feel like she would experiment because every time she is in a culture ever, she gloms onto that culture and then tries everything
Yes,
that they're
she
doing.
does.
So all she would need to do is go to one lesbian bar and she'd be like, let me give it a shot. I feel
Oh. So I'm wondering, is that like no, now we're getting into a whole discussion about like cultural appropriation.
if she were surrounded by lesbians, she would absolutely be gay.
You know what? We stand an appropriating queen.
Yeah, I'm like, you know what? She's culturally appropriating, but as long as she's doing it for the gays, it's fine. I don't know.
I have no problems with that.
Okay.
But I'm getting mostly imperfect ally from her.
Yeah.
She's trying her best. So we're all agreeing that like 1-ish.
Yeah. Okay. 1-ish.
Yeah,
1-ish.
one-ish.
This is
Number 2.
Can I just say something quickly? I looked at your list and I was like, who's the turf among all of them? And I could not find any. I'm like, damn.
Who's the turf?
Who's the turf in the Wheel of Time?
Who's the turf?
Elida. Elida, 100%.
Oh, yes!
You know what? That is absolutely true.
Elida, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm going to be mad if Elida
Yeah.
doesn't have turf bangs in the show.
Yeah.
Elida's absolutely a jerk.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Avienda.
Okay. No, I wasn't going to do Avienda. We can't do all 16 of these.
Oh, okay.
I was going to go Padden Fane next.
Oh,
0.
0.
No, X.
X. Yeah, there is an X as well, which is no sociosexual contacts or reactions.
Okay, see, but we know that that's not true because he has a very upsetting scene with some random lady after he makes her son have a seizure.
Yes.
I must have mind edited that out.
We know that he is, on the bare minimum, disturbing as hell.
Yeah. Exactly.
I put him as X, but not as Ace, because Ace people do not experience typical sexual attraction. Padden Fane is X, not because he's Ace, but because he has no desires for anything other than to find the dagger and to wallow in his dark filth. Not food, not shelter, not sex, nothing at all. He's just, and even if he were to have sex, it would be some sort of a power thing and not an attraction thing.
It's a power thing over an attraction thing. Yeah,
I agree.
He's just a predator.
So a non-Ace X.
Yes.
Speaking of predators, everybody should go watch Prey on Hulu. It's a very good film.
I am so excited about it as well.
So good.
That segue was perfect.
May we please talk about Avienda, because Robert Jordan wrote one incredibly sexually arousing, like his hottest scene was written by accident, because when Avienda goes to Elaine, takes her top off, bends over and goes, "I've slept with your boyfriend, do what you will." There's the hottest scene in these books. I will die on this hill. I was hysterical the entire time. No, that is the hottest scene in the book. It's over. And he wrote it by accident. I can't.
Yeah, she's a solid 5.
She's a 5.
Abby? Oh, yeah.
She has so much tension with Elaine. It's wild.
Oh, my God. Anytime people are like, no, I don't see it, I'm like,
how?
Is it in The Shadow Rising where she's like describing Elaine to Rand? Like, the monologue? Like,
James, do you want to retract your statement about how I'm basically straight? I'm salivating over this scene.
Have you not seen her? Look at how beautiful her bosoms are. They're so full.
Have you seen her in the bath? I'm like, oh my God, no, but tell me more.
Yep.
Sorry, I just think about the Avienda sweat tent scene, which is just basically like a little graphic.
Avienda's incredibly hot to me. It's so hot to me.
Yes.
She's 5. I think she and Elaine have way more sexual chemistry than she and Rand do, and I will die on this hill. And I'm begging Rafe to make it so. I'm begging Rafe to make it happen.
He will. I am sure he
will.
I
think he will.
Oh,
I think so too.
Matt, do you want to pick the next character?
Yes, and I'm going to pick Rand, and I'm going to say that Rand is a 6 because only a closeted gay man would be so insecure in his sexuality and how he presents it to the world that he would get him not just 1 coochie, but 3 coochies to present to the world as his harem. And he never has sex with Avienda or Elaine because they're always boning each other. And maybe he only had sex with Avienda because of the igloo and Elaine because of a prophecy. And Min's like, she's boyish, she's non-binary. And maybe he's a 5.5.
He regularly sleeps with men.
That's true. Rand sleeps. I'm sure Rand has boned Matt and Gowan. And the reason that Gowan hates Rand isn't because of the whole murder my mommy thing. It's because he never called back the next day.
Okay. No, my thing is Rand and Asmodean had tension, and I will die on that hill.
Don't get Matt started.
I can't wait to see Yosha and Harry Styles as Asmodean.
Oh my God!
Chemistry in the show.
I think Rand is closer to like a 4.5, but
that's what I was gonna say.
He's a freaking 1.
He's a 1?
I was going with 2.
Oh, okay.
So we're all over the place on this man. I was going with 2.
Maybe you're talking about your headcanon Rand, but Brooke Rand.
This is the thing. I keep getting swept up in Matt's intricate fan fiction.
Web of lies.
You said it, I didn't.
Just call me Mogadian.
Oh yeah. Mogadian.
Mogadian.
Mogedian.
Mojadian.
I'm sorry that I write romance better than Robert Jordan, so it's not my fault.
It's not that hard.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Philo.
Bless his heart, he tried.
Yeah, I'm going 2 for Rand for me.
Okay.
Okay.
There's a disappointment in your voice, James.
I was hoping for better. We averaged a 3.4 on that.
Okay.
Oh, you're making stats. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, of course I'm making stats. How dare you? I'm taking your job.
Mhm.
Let's do for Kat, let's do Nynaeve.
So this is the thing. I'm going to be realistic because as much as I would like to say that she is higher on the scale, she's not. Nynaeve is I would say a 1, right? I think she's a 1. I don't think she's...
I would say show Nynaeve.
Show Nynaeve might be a little bit more.
Show Nynaeve is probably closer to like a 2.5.
Yeah.
But book Nynaeve is a 1.
But book Nynaeve, my girl is a 1.
She's a 0.
Okay.
Yeah. 0. Yeah, no, she is a 0. I
Yeah.
I want it to happen, but it won't.
I know.
I'll give Show Nynaeve a 1 because she had chemistry with Leandrin's cheekbones.
She did, yes. It's hard not to have chemistry with Leandrin's cheekbones, though.
True.
My lord.
That's very fair.
My lord, those... Whew. Okay, anyway.
But I feel like Nynaeve would be a good ally. I
think so, too.
I feel like she'd be really cool with it.
Nynaeve would whoop ass.
Yeah.
A solid ally.
She'd be the one I'd come out to, and she'd be like,
Yeah.
and?
And she'd be
Yes,
like,
exactly.
did someone say something?
Yes.
Who do I need to kill?
Oh, if someone said something, she would be cussing them out immediately.
Oh, yes.
And it would be incredible.
Oh, yeah.
Egwene is the performative ally. Nynaeve is the actual ally.
Right.
You know what? It's true.
I mean,
I'm sorry, Egwene stands.
you know what? She's learning though. She's learning.
She's trying her best, okay?
She's like the ally we had in high school we were like, we got through it because of that girl.
Yeah.
But like she had said some problematic things. She called herself a slur hag. And, that wasn't great. But now she's really grown.
A slur hag.
I literally just said faggot like a minute ago. It's fine.
I'm not going to say it. But
well, you say it, James, but we don't.
It's not my word. But anyway, so
it's not your word.
Not my word. But I feel like she'll grow a lot as she gets older.
Yes.
Yeah, her 40s are her peak, not her teens.
Yeah, she'll read a lot. Yeah, she'll read a lot. She'll grow. She'll get there. But she starts out not there yet.
Yes.
She'll date a guy who uses the slur regularly, and she's like, but he's not like that. He's just kidding. That's what she is at first.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gon definitely says that's so gay all the time.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the last one I had was Lan because I was very curious about this one. You think Lan is a 0?
Yeah, I think Lan's a 0.
He's a 0.
Yeah.
Really?
He's a 0 who's also a very good ally.
Yes, exactly. I agree.
He would be a great ally.
For sure.
Sholan will step in through this conversation.
Oh, Sholan.
I feel like
Sholan was open.
Sholan feel like open to it.
But I just saw that as him being very, very supportive, though.
Very secure in his sexuality.
Yeah, very secure in who he is. And so he would be like which is perfect. Him and Nynaeve are like they're the safe parents.
Can I just say really fast? One moment I really loved about the show was when Dina turns to Rand and is like, oh, I just assumed you and Matt were a couple. And he goes, oh, no, I'm not gay. And I was like, how great was that? Because typically you'd see a straight man be like, no.
Offensive. Ew.
And he was just like, no, I'm not. I loved that. I'm sure you all have talked about it, but I just wanted to say I loved that as well.
That was on our TV show episode, which is non-book spoilers, so you can listen to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Great.
Okay, so I'm apparently the only person that thinks that Lan is a little gay. Not like, I think he's like a 2.
I feel like maybe in the Navy, You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, he was around that brotherly love for a very long time.
Okay.
I can see him being open to it.
I'm not against it. I just don't see the evidence for it. That's all.
It's here.
I just want to say, and I know we're not going to do many more of these, but I would like the show to make Loyal Ace, because he's always struck me as Ace in the books. And
I'm here for that.
I would love that.
He does not deserve to be shackled to a spouse of either sex.
But I don't know how far. I don't know what I can't.
I assume he's ending up with Aerith. I'm assuming.
We aren't saying anything.
No, but I mean, his mother's always harassing him in the early books, so
yeah, no, they're looking for him specifically so that she can marry him, and he always talks about her. So I'm assuming.
And I just want him to be Ace and have his books and his friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here for that.
I would like that for him.
Yeah. He doesn't need to be clipmatized.
You.
Oh my God.
Okay, so Allie never comes back to us again.
I'm sorry, I'm vulgar.
Poor Allie.
No, if anything, I'll be on every day. Whatever you want, I'll be here.
Okay, so I think that'll be it.
No. I'm sorry. Why are we not doing Moraine?
Moraine's a 6. There's nothing to discuss.
Moraine is a 6.
Yeah, it's true. It's because it's easy. She's a 6.
Moraine is also one of the hottest characters.
Yes.
I get so mad. Okay, I got so mad because during the Greenwell Cup, I think the first Greenwell Cup, someone said to me, I mean, Moraine's not hot. She's like mom. And I'm like, no, Moraine is mommy. That is,
I mean, she is mommy.
Ooh.
That's true.
Mommy?
She is so,
Mommy?
mommy.
Mommy?
I'm sorry.
Mommy?
Sorry.
Mommy?
Sorry.
Sorry.
Mommy?
Yeah, and she has been, before, pre-Rosamund Pike has been, in my mind, one of the hotter characters. And I'm like, how dare. And,
The audacity.
And her thoughts about Swan in New Spring are the gayest thoughts.
Gayest thing ever.
The gayest. Oh.
Yeah.
She's a beautiful porcelain doll. Like,
outstanding.
Stop it. That she tickled her. Like, no, stop. I can't.
She kissed her in a way that only Swan could kiss.
Very straight behavior. Very heterosexual behavior.
Very heterosexual behavior. Now are we okay, Camille?
Yes.
Okay.
But I mean, come on. You say 90 for Kat and Brent for Matt.
Right.
I can have Moraine, okay?
That's right. You're right.
Fine.
Okay. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Queers of Time. We, what do we say next? We're happy to have you here. You can find us on socials, Twitter.
I'm going to find it and say it again.
No, don't edit this out. Don't be so mean to me. And you can also support us on Patreon, where we post a bunch of exclusive stuff, behind the scenes stuff, and unedited videos, which is going to be particularly interesting for this episode. So, have fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for listening. This was Queers of Time, a Wheel of Time podcast. The music is Dance of the Witches by Julius H.